Hey everyone, Rob here from Gunfather Milsim, and tonight I'm going to talk about the biggest force multiplier for you and your team on the airsoft field, which of course is radios. A lot of people invest in better guns and better builds, HPA, blah blah blah, cooler plate carriers and what have you, when the biggest thing to increase your team's ability, or your ability if you know how to use it correctly, on the field is a radio. I've done videos in the past on radios, and I've basically talked about real broad stroke kind of stuff, different radio models available, handsets versus headsets, stuff like that. But today I'm going to talk about how to communicate on the radio, how to actually use it strategically to give your team an advantage. I think that is something that is severely lacking in airsoft and Milsim communities. Now, when I first started playing airsoft back in 2000, I think about 2007, that's one of the things. I'd only played paintball like 4 times, but that was one of the things that really impressed me about airsoft versus paintball is the number of players that were using radios to communicate and to strategize and maneuver on the enemy. I thought that was kind of cool. So for those of you that don't understand, or I got the whiteboard out, kind of broad strokes here, okay? Why radios are so important. So if you're on a team with 2 other dudes, okay, and let's say you're heading this way, and this is your field, and let's say there's, I don't know, 50 yards in between each of you, so it's further than you can actually communicate with hand signals or just yelling at each other. And there's 3 bad guys over here, and this guy sees them. This is a really big problem for this guy right here. If he A, doesn't have a radio, or B, has a radio and doesn't know how to use it correctly to communicate this to his other 2 buddies. Now, if he does have a radio and he knows how to communicate it, this is an easy day. Okay, this is a great opportunity for these two guys to come flanking in and attack these targets from 2 different angles. And that's essentially all using radios is identifying targets to your teammates and maneuvering on those targets. Now, when you're by yourself, all you can do is you have your observations, and you can just deal with your observations as you see them. Okay, that is extremely limiting. But when you're on a team that has radios, now you can use everyone's observations together, so you can basically see the entire field and know where the enemy is using your observations and their observations communicated accurately, and then form a strategy to ideally engage those targets. I know that's really simple, and this is simple stuff, but for some reason people just don't seem to grasp it, because I've seen a lot of very advanced players that still don't carry radios, or they do carry radios and they just use them to kind of chat with their buddies about, hey, I'm going back to respawn or whatever. First, get your radio. Never used a radio before in your life. First thing you want to do, besides getting on the correct channel, is you want to turn off your Roger beeps, you want to turn off your call beeps, and you want to turn off your Vox. Vox is voice activation, so basically if I speak loud enough, it'll automatically transmit what I'm saying. Vox is for when there's like 2 people talking, like from one vehicle to another. It's not for using in a team environment, because basically you're just going to hear a guy heavy breathing, and then it takes up the whole channel, and then you shut down the whole channel just because the guy's got his Vox on and his PT is lacking. So turn off your Vox, all right? Turn off your chirps, turn off any sort of call signs. All those are going to do is fill up the channel with noise, and they're just going to piss people off. So once you've done that, you got to learn your ABCs of radio, okay? And understand that radio in law enforcement and radio in the military is different, okay? And actually, radio from department to department on a law enforcement perspective can be very different. A lot of departments use 10 codes, like 1010, 1020, and stuff like that. You got to memorize all the codes. It's kind of unwieldy, and honestly, in a modern age of encrypted radios, it's not that critical anymore. So a lot of departments are switching to what they call plain speak. The department that I work on is a plain speak department. Okay? So, ABCs of radio: accuracy, brevity, clarity. Okay, this is where we start. Now, accuracy is basically talking about, when you think accuracy in radio, think location. Whether that be your location or the location of whatever you're trying to describe. So, it doesn't do much good to get on the radio and say, I see the other team right there. Because nobody knows what right there is, and nobody knows where you are in relation to it. You got to add some locations in there. Okay, you got to go, hey, this is Rob. I'm on the west side of the field, about 50 yards north of the spawn, and I see 5 targets that are north of me 100 yards. Okay, now that's a pretty lengthy description. Usually you don't have to go in that much detail, but you want to give some sort of location. If you've never given a location at all up until that point, and people have no idea where you are going to have to give that much detail. But if I've already had a couple radio conversations with somebody, let's say we're in a defensive position and everybody already kind of knows where I'm at, then you can skip to, hey, this is Rob. I got 3 targets 50 yards north of my location, and they're moving left to right. Something like that. These location descriptions let everybody else know what you're talking about. Okay. Brevity. B. Brevity means being brief, not talking excessively on the radio. Get your point across, put the information out there that you need to put out there, but it's not story time, okay? Say what you got to say, and then get off the radio. Because when you're taking up the channel, that's more people that can't get on there. The last one is clarity. Clarity means being clear in your transmissions. A lot of people, when they're new with using radios, for whatever reason, when they're trying to be quiet, they whisper on the radio. Or they get really excited and they yell on the radio and they scream on the radio, especially when they're under stress or they're scared. I see that a lot in law enforcement with new officers. They'll be screaming on the radio when they don't need to be screaming. You need to remain calm. And if you're trying to be quiet on the radio, because maybe there's bad guys right next to you or nearby and you don't want them to hear you, instead of whispering, you just speak in a lower tone. Okay? When you whisper in the radio, when you say, hey, they're over here, what that does is it comes across as just high-pitched static. It's very difficult to understand. But if you just speak in a lower tone when you're trying to be quiet, that will still come across clearly and everybody can understand it. All right? So ABCs: accuracy, brevity, clarity. All right? So where do we go from here now that we know our ABCs? Now we're going to talk about how we actually transmit on the radio. Now understand that when you're using a radio channel, the more people that are on that channel, the more formal and strict you have to be with your radio procedures. So if there's 50 people on the channel, you have to be very precise about what you're talking about. You have to say, this is so-and-so trying to reach so-and-so, and they say, go ahead, and you go, okay, well, here's exactly where I'm at and exactly what I'm trying to say, and blah, blah, blah. You got to be extremely accurate in your description. Now, if there's, let's say, 6 people on a channel, which is typically on an Airsoft game what my team has is about 6 guys. We have our own team channel, about 6 of us on there. You can be a little bit more fast and loose. I can say, I'll just use Robin Vance as an example, because Vance is an old partner of mine I used to play a lot of games with. First, I'm going to identify who I am and who I'm trying to talk to. Okay, so I'm going to say Rob to Vance. Now Vance is going to respond to let me know that he's ready to, he heard me talking, calling for him, and he's ready to hear my transmission. He's going to say, Vance, go ahead, or he's going to say, he's going to get on the radio and just say go. It's very common, that's a shortcut. I'm going to go, Vance, I got this at this location, what's your location, whatever. Okay, and you're going to converse back and forth throughout that conversation, and at the end of it you want to end with a clear. I think the military uses copy or over and out or whatever. In law enforcement plain speak, we always use clear or clear on that or whatever. So once we're done having our conversation, let's say I tell him that I see some enemies over here and I figure out he's to my right but downrange a little bit. I'm like, okay, why don't you maneuver towards them and I'll keep maneuvering this way. He's going to end his transmission with clear, and that's the end of our conversation. It can be kind of difficult if you're not used to communicating in that fashion, but if you force yourself to communicate that way, you'll get good at it very quickly. Plain speak radio communications are really easy to pick up. Now, let's say you're on a channel with just you and one other person, like just me and Vance. Well, since we're the only two people on the channel, you can skip a lot of that Rob to Vance, Vance go ahead crap. You can be very informal. I can just go, hey Vance, I'm over here and I see guys over here. I'm going to try to maneuver around them over here. And he's going to jump on there and go clear. So we can skip a lot of the BS when there's only two of you. Now, that is not common. Usually you're going to have, in my experience, 6 to 12 people on any given channel. And when you're on a channel of that size, you need to start out every communication with, hey, this is me, I want to talk to this person. So just to sum up plain speak radio communications, I'm going to go over the 4 basic steps of it. And if you stick to these 4 basic steps, you'll never go wrong, you'll do just fine. And the more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. Okay? So our first step is going to be identify. And that means identifying who you are and who you want to talk to. So every time I get on the radio, it's going to be, just to stick with the example we've been using, Rob to Vance. That's me saying, hey, this is Rob on the radio. I want to talk to Vance. Next step is Vance's turn. He's the receiver. He's going to say, go for Vance, send it, go ahead, whatever. He's saying, I'm ready to receive your message. Next, we have the actual message, which of course varies, but hey, I'm at the respawn and I'm heading over here. Then I need a confirmation message from Vance, and that's him saying, clear, gotcha, roger, meet you there, whatever. Okay? Notice it goes back and forth. Me, Vance, me, Vance. It's important it goes back and forth, thus communication. Okay? If I can't get this confirmation, I got to go back to my message. I got to ask again. Vance, did you get that? Are you clear on what I just said? Try to always get that confirmation at the end. Otherwise, you're not even sure if they heard it. Okay, maybe something happened. Maybe he got hit. Maybe there's a loud noise and he didn't hear it. And if he does need to hear it again, he's going to say something like, no, repeat message, repeat traffic, say again, whatever. But keep going back and forth here until you can get that confirmation. Yeah, I heard your message. I know what you're talking about, and I'll meet you there. All right? And thus you always want to end your conversations on a radio with some sort of confirmation, such as clear or roger or whatever. I don't never use roger. Roger's a military thing. Or maybe it's not anymore. I don't know. I wasn't in the military. But in law enforcement, we always say clear. So that's the basics of plain speak radio communication, which I highly recommend you use in Airsoft. Stick with that formula right there and you'll be fine, but you got to force yourself to use it. And a lot of people are kind of hesitant to start using radios, and I understand why. They don't want to sound stupid on the radio, but sounding stupid on the radio is all part of learning. It's not a big deal. There's a difference between sounding stupid and being completely incompetent. And I want to tell you right now, I would rather have 4 people on a channel that all know what they're doing than 12 people on the channel and 6 of them don't have a clue. I've had plenty of games where there was just somebody on the radio channel that was just, a good player, and they meant well and they were having a good time, but they just couldn't seem to stay off the radio and couldn't seem to transmit helpful information. They would leave out where they were. They would scream on the radio. They had constant chirps and buzzes going off, or maybe their Vox was going off and I could hear them having a conversation with their buddy next to them that, to be honest, the whole team didn't need to hear. I would locate who that was. I would go over to them and I would turn off their radio and I would say politely, hey, you're kind of taking up the channel. Maybe the radio's not for you this game and we'll work on it later. Because it only takes one guy who doesn't know what they're doing to shut down an entire channel. And if you lose your channel, that huge force multiplier is gone. Okay? I cannot stress enough. The difference between a good team and a great team is their ability to communicate. It has nothing to do with all their cool whiz-bang guns and gear and how cool their camouflage works or t-shirts or patches or Facebook pages or any of that bullshit. It all comes down to how well they communicate with each other, how quickly they strategize and can maneuver on a target. All right? Hope you guys found this helpful, and thanks for watching.